Thank you, Alistair. Thanks, Urban Design Group, for having me here. I'm going to talk about one project. That project is work that the studio has been doing in Chengdu. And it's caused us to think about the middle class. It's caused us to think about a flagrantly unspectacular demographic in a flagrantly unspectacular location, the peripheries of big cities in China. And our response was, as we thought about it, well, how do you create an unspectacular master plan? We thought we would dispense with the kind of spectacularism that often accompanies any kind of discussion about China, and think about this very influential part of the Chinese market and the Chinese sort of urban terrain, which is rewriting what kind of urban geography looks like. The middle class is going into accommodating the middle classes within the peripheries of large cities and between large cities. This master plan is in Chengdu, a place which has benefited from a Go West policy that is central government-sponsored infrastructure and improvements in the last 10 years as a kind of way of rebalancing the economic kind of juggernaut that's been happening on the East Coast cities. We are located to the north of Chengdu, where the red dot, you can see the urban mass of central Chengdu. And we're just on the cusp of a new district called Xindu, which is to the north. Again, if you can see our site there. We're at the edge of the center, sort of the central main area of Chengdu on a greenbelt, and a kind of wishy-washy threshold between Chengdu and this new district of Xindu. Here are some pictures of Xindu district, which are not unlike many that you find kind of throughout Chengdu and Sichuan province in the cities, in the larger cities, where there is kind of a street life which happens, especially where the hands of modern master planners haven't got to. There's an incredible kind of use of open space, particularly if it's green, and Sichuan and Chengdu are kind of colloquially known in Chengdu, in China, for having kind of more laid-back lifestyle. The weather is a bit balmier. They eat spicy food. People are more inclined to kind of go outside if the sun's shining and sort of enjoy themselves, or so the colloquialism goes anyway. You have this, which is extremely common in a lot of modern cities, which is massive infrastructure. A lot of it sometimes safeguarded just for future growth in road transport. And then a kind of sort of typological cookie cuttering that happens through superblock subdivisions that sort of march their way across kind of new Chinese cities. That is the sort of the kind of psychogeographic kind of appraisal of it. I'd like to say some very unspectacular statistics about where we were dealing, and they are these. Xindu is only the 5th most populous district in Chengdu, a city which is only the 2nd biggest city in Sichuan itself, which is only about the 8th wealthiest in China. So we're really dealing with a kind of section of the community which is not your high-end East Coast tycoon. It's not your struggling peasant, but there's a rapidly fattening middle comprised of such kinds of people. The middle class itself is extremely fragmented. So here are some statistics that our research yielded from Xindu district. The district will add 333,000 people in the next few years, and they're mainly immigrants. 90% of them will be of working age. To put that into perspective, London is about sort of high 60s, 70% working population. So we're talking about an extremely productive kind of population here. And they've seen a year-on-year increase in their disposable income in the last 5-year period. In terms of who's buying apartments there, 82% of residential buyers are expected to be from Xindu district, not even from sort of outside in greater Chengdu, but actually within Xindu district. Smaller and mid-market apartments have retained their values. against luxury apartments, which have slightly sort of stalled or dipped in the last global recession, or the slowdown in China's real estate market. And 62%, comparing with the comparable site, 62% of buyers are owner-occupier. And to put that into perspective, again, about 70% is sort of what developers often aim for in order to make socially sustainable residential development. So we're not talking about your financial sort of traders from Shanghai, but a really kind of local person there. They would be a professional from a local design institute who is operating regionally, or maybe kind of a mid-manager from a logistics company, which sort of is borne out by these kind of facts, that Grade A office has kind of topped out, but the secondary sector and more suburban office and kind of cleaner light industrial spaces are those that have seen stable demand. Accommodating the middle classes for us, in a nutshell, meant not pandering to the model of land speculation which services investment products, and rather to focus or prioritize, those aren't necessarily evils, but to prioritize places where people will be investing to live themselves. And so we posited these principles, none of which are really spectacular, but they are all in kind of relation to planning development norms in China, which don't necessarily kind of aim towards these aims. And they are to promote scales and types of development that enhance neighborliness and walkability, maximize collective benefit by procuring open spaces and securing public functions, to restore a street culture that once existed in some old settlements, to bring life to the water, and our site is sited at the confluence of two rivers, to highlight the cultural significance. We're on a spur of the old Silk Route, and to signify the gateway into Sindhu district. As you saw in the previous slides, we're on the threshold between kind of Chengdu and Sindhu district. The urban design framework really revolves around the division of our 100-hectare site into three neighborhoods, an activated loop which connects those, and which is hinged off of a transport hub. And this Sanhe area master plan has as its raison d'etre the extension of the line 3 of the metro system. Here's where we are on the site. So at the confluence of two rivers, the loop, the three neighborhoods, and the metro station as the kind of conceptual bones of what we're trying to do here. So running quickly to the CGIs, and not dispensing with the 200-page report. This is one of the neighborhood hubs that we were trying to create, and each of the neighborhoods had a neighborhood hub where we reclaimed land for speculative development and safeguarded, or attempted to safeguard it for community use. And this is where we pooled kindergartens and nurseries and wet markets, restaurants, in order to kind of provide an interface for residents. And we recovered value by balancing the density on the neighboring parcels of land, which we think will increase in value because they have amenity like this. The loop is effectively a linear configuration of enhanced public realm, which is fronted by active uses. Really, it's nothing more than that. But again, we're pushing against a kind of development model that imposes sort of green setbacks and clear divisions of function between state-laid infrastructure and development lots, which are the domain of private developers. We've proposed a retail leisure district or sub-district along the river. This was an attempt to kind of overcome, again, a kind of a centrally dictated 50-meter buffer from the river, in which we're not allowed to build anything. And so instead of kind of bringing life to the water, literally through built structures, we brought the park back into the district so that there was a feeling of kind of waterfront activity. The big reason for the master plan is the station, which can be seen here as an overground rail station. The train's zipping into it here. The station, we inherited its location on an isolated lot overlooking a river. We couldn't really work with the location, but what we did say was that it had to be integrated to, physically connected to adjacent sites so they could yield increases in development value, and we provided a large viewing platform over which, from which you could view the river. So it's really taking opportunities and making opportunities from the constraints that we were given. A large road runs through, and it's an arterial, it's a regional road that runs through the site, and this was to be fronted as a commercial strip, which larger scale retail and small office, home office developments. We were pushed to up the density here, where our economic analysis was suggesting that perhaps that was that demand might kind of flatten out. But we're happy to provide an imagery which we know is a political tool and less of an image of what it will be like. Master plan, the word master plan I don't mind using, and a lot of people I've met do, since they're sometimes not designed by males, and they're not blueprints for how things are actually going to work out. In practice, and I'm sure as many of you here know, the word master plan comes to mean a whole variety of things, from loose frameworks and guiding principles to blueprints for how things ought to look that are statutorily guarded. And I think we're able to kind of grow the use and evolve the use of the master plan to encompass that in broad terms, much like the word sustainability. We need to kind of justify or sort of clarify what we mean from it. In our master plan, we're looking to provide political tools for the local planning bureau to make arguments for the prioritization of this area. That's quite different from saying that it has to look like what we've drawn. But what we've also said is that there are actually some very pragmatic elements to this which you should be adopting, and these we're imagining as step changes from the planning and development norms that you might normally get in Chinese city development. And they are small, but we believe that they're very significant, and if we can affect policy and planning at that level, then we will have influence in a kind of positive way. They are things like making smaller blocks. The left is the strategic plan that we inherited, and we immediately set about it at breaking down plot sizes so that perimeter developments were in effect kind of encouraged. Streets were made to work harder. Areas were more walkable, and the overall master plan is not seen as a spreadsheet of investor-led product, but places where people would be inhabiting. As I mentioned in a previous slide, the station would have to be physically connected to adjacent plots in order to maximize the financial advantage. And areas of infrastructure safeguarding, like this incredible kind of sort of area of tarmacked blankness, we reclaimed and said, well, okay, you may have a future flyover there, but let's say that if that happens in 5 years, shall we have a public space about 2 hectares to make use of that space? We encourage the active programming of landscape, not as sort of buffers, but as places of inhabitation, the encouragement of sports, of community agriculture, and here as ways of remediating water quality. And so this is the master plan as it will not look, and we were quite happy about that. But it is our hope that some of the principles that are embodied within that do get adopted. Thank you.